For most of my adult life, my mom has called me at exactly 9 p.m. every single night, no matter where either of us is. It started when I moved out for college and just never stopped. It's not really a check-in, not the way people assume when I explain it. She calls to talk about nothing. Her day, my day, something she saw on the news. It's a habit at this point more than a conversation, the kind of thing you barely register happening until it doesn't. I'm telling you that up front, because it matters later, though for a long time I wouldn't have told you it mattered at all. I lived alone that year in a ground floor apartment in a converted house, split into 3 units, mine facing the backyard and a narrow gravel alley that ran behind the building. It wasn't a bad area. It also wasn't the kind of place where anything ever happened, which is probably why I stopped being careful about the things you're supposed to be careful about. Locking the side gate, closing the blinds fully, that sort of thing. The trouble started with small things I explained away, the way you always do. A window I was sure I'd left closed, cracked open half an inch. A smell in the apartment that wasn't mine, not strong, just present, like someone else's laundry detergent lingering in a room I hadn't left the window open in. I told myself it was the building settling old plumbing, a draft finding its way through a gap I hadn't noticed before. Then, about 3 weeks in, I came home from work and found my back door unlocked. I remembered locking it that morning specifically, because I always did the same routine. Deadbolt, then handle lock, then a tug to check it held. I stood in my kitchen for a long time that evening, going through everything in the apartment, drawer by drawer, closet by closet, looking for anything moved or missing. Nothing was gone. Nothing looked disturbed. Just the door. I told myself I'd imagined locking it. I wanted to believe that more than almost anything I've ever wanted to believe. Over the following 2 weeks, it happened twice more. Both times, nothing missing, nothing obviously touched, just a door that shouldn't have been unlocked. I started leaving a folded piece of paper wedged under the door as a marker, low enough that opening the door even slightly would knock it loose. Every single morning after that, it was on the floor. I called a locksmith, had every lock in the apartment replaced, including a second deadbolt on both doors. For 12 days, the paper stayed exactly where I left it. I started to relax, actually started to believe that whatever it was, a person or my own paranoia, was finished. It wasn't a person breaking in from outside at all. On the 13th night, my mother called at 9 p.m, same as always, and we were maybe 5 minutes into talking about nothing in particular when I heard, very clearly, a floorboard creak inside my own hallway closet, not outside, not through a window. Inside a closet I walk past every single day, the one I used for coats and a vacuum I never used, directly across from my bedroom door. I didn't say anything to my mum right away, and just went quiet, and she noticed immediately, the way people who've talked to you every night for 15 years notice a change in your breathing before you've said a word. She asked what was wrong, and I told her very quietly that I thought someone was in my closet. She didn't hang up. She didn't panic in a way that would have made things worse. She told me, calmly and immediately, to walk out the front door right now while she stayed on the line, and that she was calling the police from her own house the second I confirmed I was outside. I did exactly that. Walked, not ran, out my front door, down the steps, and into the street in front of my building. My mother's voice steady in my ear the entire time, asking me simple, grounding questions to keep me focused. Was I outside yet? Was the street lit? Was anyone else around? The police arrived within 11 minutes, and it's strange what you remember about the minutes before that. I remember the exact crack in the sidewalk I was standing over, the porch light across the street flickering, my mother asking me 3 separate times if I could still see the front of my building, as if she needed to keep confirming I hadn't wandered back toward it out of some instinct to check on my own things. What they found in that closet wasn't a stranger who'd broken in that night. It was evidence that someone had been living there, on and off, for weeks. A sleeping bag folded behind the vacuum, a small stash of my own snacks that I'd assumed I'd simply lost track of, a phone charger that wasn't mine, and a notebook, water damaged, with what the officers described as a loose log of times, mine, specifically, times I usually left for work, times I usually came home, blocks of the day marked out as safe to move around in. The panel at the back of the closet, which I'd always assumed was just drywall backing a plumbing chase, had been quietly removed and reset so many times the screws no longer held properly, giving access to a crawl space that ran the length of the building, connecting to a similar closet in the vacant unit next door that had been empty for months. He'd been getting in and out through that vacant unit the entire time, using my apartment as a place to sleep on nights he needed it, careful enough to always be gone before I woke, right up until the night my new deadbolts happened to make his usual exit route slower than his usual entrance. And he was still inside when I got home unexpectedly early from a shift that had let out ahead of schedule. I think about how ordinary that night was supposed to be. My mother didn't call because she suspected anything. She called because she always calls, the same habit she's kept for 15 years. The kind of routine so unremarkable I used to roll my eyes at how little there ever was to say. If she'd called 10 minutes later, I would have already been in my bedroom, past that closet, with the door shut and the television on loud enough to cover a floorboard creak. If she'd called 10 minutes earlier, I'd have already hung up and never known to go quiet at exactly the moment it mattered. I moved out within the month. I still live alone, but I check every closet, every crawl space access panel, every unremarkable corner of any place I rent, the day I move in and every few weeks after. My mother still calls at 9 p.m. every night, still mostly to talk about nothing. I used to think that call was the least eventful part of my day. I don't think that anymore, and I've never once told her why, because I don't think either of us could handle hearing out loud how close that ordinary habit came to being the only reason I'm still around to answer it.